Thank you. Hey, everybody. It's going to be a tough act to follow. My topic isn't quite as interesting as Copilot. Mostly, I'm here to talk to you guys today a little bit more about how I organize my day as an architect and a consultant. Share my screen out real quick. There we go. Everybody see my screen okay?
Yep, looks great.
Awesome. All right. So today I'm going to be talking about mastering what you have to do in your day and how I do it using Planner. Copilot, definitely, I'm looking forward to seeing how it might integrate with this tool in the future. There's a lot of cool ways I can see it bringing in tasks and creating cards, but right now we have to do it all manually. So that being said, a little bit about me. I work as a technical architect with Concurrency, particularly in secure modern workplace. I've got roughly about 17 years of technology experience working in various capacities. I've got a bunch of technical certifications revolving mostly around Microsoft and security. I won't bore you with the whole list, but additionally, I dabble as a technical education creator. So occasionally you may come across, e-learnings or things like that that have me dressing up like a wizard to teach Microsoft development content. That's the kind of silly things I do, in addition to potentially seeing me at my local axe throwing arena trying to, do the best I can to dominate everybody around me. So kind of walking through what we're going to go over in the next hour. We'll start with what Planner is for those of you who may be unfamiliar with it. We'll look at some of the comparisons between some of the other task management projects out there that tend to get wrapped up in the M365 stack. I don't have lists on here because it's not necessarily a like tool. And then we'll dive into the case study. How do I use Planner in my day-to-day duties? We'll go through some of the weaknesses it has at the very end because I want to make sure that everybody understands while it's a very robust tool, it's a very cool tool, it does have some weaknesses, and there's a few things that I'm wish listing that I'm hoping eventually come around to play, and then we'll close up with some questions. So that being said, Planner is primarily meant to be project and task oriented. It's part of the M365 offering, and it's available in almost every M365 licensing package. You can get it in using the M365 basic license. So in most cases, if you're using most of the M365 business offerings, you're going to have Planner in your stack. It integrates with To-Do, it integrates with Loop, it integrates with Outlook. It's got a lot of cool ways on how it can notify you and how it can actually transfer data around. So if you're interested in things being able to cross-communicate, Planner is a really good tool for that. Now, in terms of where Microsoft's Planner fits in the stack, we see things like Microsoft To-Do. Some of you may actually already leverage To-Do in Outlook. Typically, when we're adding tasks in Outlook, that's been offloaded to synchronize with To-Do now. There may be some of you who just use it to just do daily task tracking for just small tasks that you have, but unfortunately, it falls short because it's a very limited tool. It is only for simple task tracking, and it falls short in some ways in terms of assignments, recording information, document attachments. There's a lot of things that I personally need in my day-to-day task shuffle. Project is your more robust tool. That's for your big project plans. That's where you need to have the micromanaging. I need to know where this falls, who this is assigned to, where this is at. That's the tool that, we're holding Scrum meetings over. We're holding all the project analysis updates. It's a really big tool, and it takes certifications to master and use appropriately. Planner fits right in the middle. And so for me, this is why Planner is a great tool. It gives me the task tracking capabilities and the simplicity of something like Microsoft To-Do, while still giving me some of that more advanced functionality that something like Project has to offer. So when I'm using Planner, it's at a personal level for me to be able to track what I'm working on, be able to move things around, be able to prioritize my day, and also to be able to give people oversight into what I'm doing. There's a lot of places where maybe I need my account executive on a project to be able to look at updates on what I'm working on. There may be opportunities I want them to be able to see. And so Planner gives me the ability to do that in an ad hoc fashion. So looking at that, switch over. So when I go through Planner day to day, this is typically what my board looks like. Now, mind you, this is just a mock-up board I've made. I can't exactly be throwing all my clients' information out there. But using Planner day to day for me involves creating a series of cards and moving things around. You can see this looks kind of like a Kanban board, which, I mean, ultimately it is. I've created several lanes for the types of tasks that I need to be able to complete in a day or things that I need to be able to review. And I generally break things down into things that I'm working on now, things that I'm working on over a period of time, projects I may be a part of that need me to be able to either share information or things that I may have investigations on. Typically, I'll also create things for research where maybe there's something my client has mentioned they want or need, and that's something that I need to look into for them. It may not be something that I have expertise on. So this is where I can leverage other people on my team. This is where I can kind of lean in and start discussing things with people and start maybe putting documentation and links. I keep things in the backlog, which are things that maybe have had some type of blocker associated with them. Something where maybe there's something going on or it's just a project that got pushed back a couple quarters. And then of course I've got future planning. Future planning to me, while we say backlog and we say future planning, backlog to me are things that are confirmed that are coming up. Future planning are things like architectural oversight. What are some things that we want to move towards? What are new technologies coming up? What are things where we've got like renewals coming up? So those are the types of things that I put into my future plans. Breaking this down a little bit more, the types of information that I put on these cards. You can see here, I've got a whole bunch of information at a glance. I've got checklists. I've got information on each card in terms of little snippets of what it's about, in addition to some tags. When I open up a card, I've got most of my information at a glance. I've got what it's associated with, who may be interested in the project, whether it's just something that I'm working on, and this is just a personal card for me, versus somebody who potentially maybe have interest in it. So if I open up this card, I do have another user associated with my card. So this is so that that person can track what's going on. They can get updates when I make comments. They can potentially make their own comments looking for updates. They can add things to the checklist. It makes it so that there's a little bit more oversight on things that I need people to be able to look into or potentially work with me on. Going through a lot of this, though, one of the biggest things I like to do is organize my notes. So I'm big on tagging. Working in Azure and just the cloud space for as long as I have, tagging is huge to me. It's been almost ingrained into everything I do. So whenever I can, I'll associate a tag so that if I need to search anything that's an operational item, if it's associated with a certain product like SharePoint or Purview, maybe it's a compliance issue, I can search these things I can sort these things by tags. And in addition, it'll make it so that I can generate reports that are based around those tags. So if I want to look at anything that I have associated with compliance or SharePoint, I'll be able to look that up. I can associate start dates, due dates. I can look at all these things, and I can make it so that when I'm going through all my work, I can also have, again, at a glance, when is something due? Is something cyclical? Is something, a checklist, something I need to be working on right now? And so with that, I can move things around. So let's see here. I've got this Teams mobile policy that isn't allowing contractors to actually get into our environment. Well, that's a bit of a high priority item. So what I can do is I can just move that over to today's tasks. And now I've got everything I need to focus on over in this column. Maybe this SharePoint permissions piece, well, that's not due until the 19th. I've got this other high priority task, so I can put that back over to my investigations pane. It's as easy as just grabbing a card and moving it over. Now, you may not like the Kanban or the card look, and that's fine. If you don't like that, then it's as easy as changing how you look at things. You can look at a grid, which puts things out into a list view, giving you the same information, but maybe you just prefer it in a medium that looks a little bit more in line. In addition, we can look at charts. So this is the reports I was mentioning before, where we can see things where we can sort things by buckets, priority, what the status is. I can look at things based off of members. If you're someone who needs something that's a little bit more robust than to do for your team, this would be a little bit more useful. As an individual, this doesn't matter to me much. But I can also look at my schedule. What's coming up? What's currently on my week? We can see here, I've got all these pieces assigned. I've got all these things that I need to look at for my week. So not only can I prioritize my day, I can also look at my week, see what's potentially coming up, see if I have anything that's due, and be able to restructure accordingly. This, honestly, is probably one of the handiest pieces of this tool to me. As someone who has to self-manage, as someone who has to constantly be on top of when things are due and having multiple clients or multiple people asking me for information, I need to be able to schedule them, get back with them. I need to be able to understand what my day should look like, because I'm left to my own devices a lot of the time. And unfortunately, that means that sometimes time management can be tough, especially I'm a father of 4. So, I have to manage things like school days. I have to manage lunches. I have to manage meetings with clients. I have to manage my household. And considering I work remote, a lot of that can get in the way. If I'm not managing my time correctly, my life can easily overwhelm me being an architect. So this helps me keep everything in order. It helps me keep my schedule in order, and it allows me to make sure that I'm prioritizing the things that need to get done now, as opposed to things that can maybe put off for a couple days, because maybe the due date isn't for another week. Maybe the due date isn't for another month, and I've got some flexibility with how I run with that. When will we have a single list that covers all of our 360 so we don't have to manage separate tags categories? I wish I had an answer for that. That's honestly on one of my workplace wish list items. Unfortunately, there isn't necessarily centralized tagging that integrates with Planner yet. So we just got to keep hoping that one day eventually we'll be able to create those centralized lists. So continuing forward, some of the other cool things that I can do with Planner. So I can build conversations around these cards. I can look at the menus. I can look at any files associated with my Planner. I can export Planner out to Excel spreadsheets. I can also, if I really, really wanted to, Microsoft has made the ability where if you are getting robust enough with how you're using Planner, you can actually take it and shift it over to being a full-blown project plan. So working with project, you can actually start with Planner if things are simple, and then move into something more robust if necessary. So if I go back to my Planner board, I've got all these pieces lined up. If I'm going through my day-to-day operations, the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, I'm going to look at my today's task. What didn't I get done yesterday? What do I need to move around? I'm going to reshuffle due dates as necessary. I'm going to assign any new tags, and I'm also going to build new tasks. So whenever I get a task, for those of you who may work in the MSP realm, it's very similar to how you manage your tickets. In the sense that you create a ticket for everything, I do the same thing in my Planner board. I create a card for everything. I have a meeting coming up. Generally, I'm going to create a card for it. I have a client presentation coming up. I'm going to create a Planner board for it, or a Planner card for it. Because when I create these cards, what I have the ability to do is I can attach things to these cards, whether that be a document, whether that be a picture, whether that be things that can help supplement me or add links. I can add it all in here. So anything I add here will make it so that whenever I got to pick this back up, I've got the ability to look at where I left off. I've got the ability to have everything in a single pane of glass or a single card. And so if I want to say add an attachment, I can add something from computer. I can add something from Teams. I could add a link to something right here in the card. And then I've got it all right here in front of me, making it so I don't got to search around anymore, making it so I don't have to go through my OneNote notebook and try to find the page that I possibly put a link on or attached a document in or maybe made a certain note. These are the types of things that make it so that day to day, I've got the ability to structure everything. Turning a request from Outlook email into a planner card. I mean, you can do that, but it's not necessarily something that's native. Unfortunately, from my experience with Planner, there isn't a native way to be able to take an email and say right click it and then turn it into a planner card. You can schedule follow-ups. You can, of course, take the information out of the email and put it into a card. But right now, the biggest integration I've seen as far as Outlook goes is going to be being able to automate things like notifications and sending emails through Planner to be able to remind you of upcoming tasks. All right. So continuing down the list. So one of the biggest things that I see personally as a consultant, one of the biggest things that I see as an architect is the fact that when you have multiple architects or multiple engineers working on a project, sometimes information falls between the cracks. And so one of the biggest things that comes to mind for me is the ability to notify everybody when I have some type of, comment that needs to be made. Of course, there's always the ability to reach out via Teams, but unfortunately, I'm not always active in Teams. Sometimes I'm knee deep in something. Sometimes I need to make a comment, and I just want everybody who may be overlooking things to be able to see what I just added. Making it so that I can just add the comment here. Everybody gets a notification. Anybody who's assigned to this will always get updated on anything that gets happens with this particular card. So if I change a due date, if I change the progress, if I change the priority, anything that gets added to this, everybody gets notified. So again, this is important for me when I've got other people who are coming in and want to be able to see information at a glance. They want to be able to get updated. It's just overall going to be that complete synergy. Sorry for the buzzword use, but it's realistically the best word here into making sure that everybody has the updates on what I'm working on if I'm working independently. Is there a way to get a measured report showing how many items were completed on time before due date before performance tracking, or a measured report email to managers to see what items are outstanding? So generally, if you're looking for reports, when we look at the charts, we can see things by priority, by bucket, by status. Unfortunately, this isn't meant to be a full project tracking tool. For metrics like that, we looked at things more on the project side. So when we're looking at things where we want to be able to see really granular reports on what's overdue, what's being tracked, what do we need to work on right this second, we're going to start falling into the category of using a more robust tool like Microsoft Project. This is more for an individual tracking status in terms of how I'm presenting this. I use Planner for myself. The people that I include on here are generally just there to be able to get oversight on what I'm working on, so that they have the ability to look at any documents I'm creating, look at any tasks that need to be done, and be able to overall be able to make comments and just be included in terms of any of the decision-making processes. For the most part, on my typical Planner board, I only have maybe 2 or 3 people sharing it with me at any given time, just because that's realistically the only people. It's usually my account executive and a project manager or 2 that I'm working with on any given client. So one of the other things that's kind of cool about Planner is you don't necessarily always have to navigate to a website either. You can also open this up in Microsoft Teams. You can actually create a tab within a team. Assuming Teams wants to load. And so now if I want to share anything out with my team, this makes it so that it becomes a much more collaborative tool. Now, this is also something that I leverage. Again, this is when I'm working with other people. This is the type of thing where I can create tasks or people can add to things. And if I want to be able to have something where other people can collaborate with me, this is really handy to be able to put in there. Being able to switch around and being able to make it so that people have access to my board are the types of things that we want to make sure that as architects we're always doing. We want to make sure that there's always some way for people to have oversight on the things that we're working on. It's especially important for clients. There have been cases, particularly in the case of my current client, where I actually share my board with them. I've created a team, I've created a planner tab, and I've made sure that they have the ability to look at what I'm working on day to day, which makes it so that when I have like, a 15-minute touch base, a 30-minute touch base, they've got the ability to look at what I'm working on and help me readjust priorities if they feel like there's something that needs to be bumped up. Otherwise, they never really got to worry about what I'm doing at any given time. They can take a look at my board at any moment. And again, because I'm structuring my day, because this is my first stop, it's one of those pieces where if they have input or if there's something I am currently like head down in and they're trying to figure out what the heck it is I'm doing with my work week, I've got the ability to always reference back to my cards. Now, as far as what this tool can do versus what it can't do, uh-oh. A small technical error, I apologize. There we go. All right. So as far as what this tool can do versus what it can't do. There it is. So when I look at what its weaknesses are, so there is some issues in having the ability to tag people in comments. When I'm making a comment, it would be really nice if when I'm collaborating, one of the biggest wish list items I have is not being able to tag people in comments can be a burden, especially when multiple people are assigned to a card. Because like I said, everybody gets the update when anything's changed. So if I have my account executive, my project manager, and my client all on a card, if I make a comment and it's not necessarily something everybody needs to see, or maybe not something everybody needs to pay attention to, it would be nice to be able to call that out. Going back to someone mentioned having centralized tagging before, I'm big on centralized tagging methods, but I'm also big on being able to make as many tags as I want. You are limited to the number of colors that Microsoft has created in Planner for the tagging. So I think the max currently is something like 30 or 45, something in that ballpark. It's limiting sometimes because I have honestly used every single color for all the tags that get associated in my workday. And so sometimes I have to reuse tags, and that can sometimes mix up my reporting because if I have to reuse a tag and I change a tag, that tag gets changed for every card that I have. So sometimes it becomes necessary to create multiple planner boards. Subtask assignment would be nice. When we saw those checklists before, one of the biggest things I would like to be able to do is to be able to create subtasks that I can assign to specific people or at least link to another card, which again goes to that bottom piece where I would really love to be able to see the ability to link cards to each other. Right now, you can't. So again, it's a very basic tool. It's not one of those things where we can get the robustness of all the project features. And then, of course, I would love it if I could set daily reminders. Right now, Planner will tell you if a due date is coming up. It will tell you if you have tasks pending. But unfortunately, there isn't a way to set some type of reminder where maybe I want to be reminded later in the day to complete certain tasks. And because it doesn't integrate with something like Outlook, it's not like I can just grab it and I can just put it into some type of reminder field. So again, these are just some of the limitations where when I say it's my first stop, it's my last stop, it's my midday stop. Honestly, my planner board is almost always in some type of view, so I know what's on my plate. Beyond that, that's realistically all I have for everybody. I didn't expect to take the full hour. It really is just kind of a this is how I use it type session, and I hope it provided some value in terms of how this tool can be leveraged to structure your day to day. So as far as using Planner goes, I'd love to field some questions in terms of either how I leverage Planner, what I think are some of the most efficient ways to put it into work for everybody, or just maybe features the tool may have. Do I use Azure DevOps? If so, how do you determine what is in Planner versus ADO? Comments better in ADO because you can tag. So as far as Azure DevOps go, I look at DevOps, the planning tool in ADO, much in the same way that I look at Project. It's a much more robust tool meant for a very specific purpose. ADO is definitely structured around the idea that you're doing development tracking. Planner is more just general planning. The ability to work with comments and tag is really important when you're doing development cycles, because obviously you need to be able to have people who maybe potentially have input on code or need to be able to work on a particular backlog item or maybe an epic and something in that realm. The tagging is much, much more important there. So I think as far as ADO goes, if you are a code developer, that's definitely the tool to work towards. This is again something where, but I mean, then again, you also probably wouldn't want to use ADO for your personal management. You'd want to focus more on the idea of being collaborative in that environment, whereas Planner, in my opinion, is that kind of step just before you need that robust collaboration. As far as Asana goes, I actually do have some experience with Asana. Asana is a very, very, very robust tool. It has a lot of cool automations that I love using. I think Asana is actually a great tool if you want to put out the licensing for something that maybe is more of a collaborative driven effort. You don't need all the stuff from Project, and you want to have the ability to have things traverse boards, create workflows, create automations. Planner isn't quite there. Whether or not that's in the plans for Planner, I'm not really sure. That's something you'd have to ask your local Microsoft rep. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at tools like Asana versus Planner, it kind of begins and ends in terms of similarity with the ability to track tasks with simplicity. Asana is going to be much more complex if you build it out across teams, across members, and it's definitely driven more towards giving you the ability to work with multiple people. Planner is definitely one of those things where it's small team driven. It's maybe meant to be used by 3 to 10 people. Me using it as an individual, it comes down to, it helps me out a lot more just because I have a little bit more of that team management and I can actually collaborate a little bit. But at the end of the day, I just want all my stuff organized and at a glance. Sorry, Microsoft, I didn't mean to throw Asana out there as a better tool than Planner. Just, I don't feel like they're a light comparison. Planner is a fantastic tool for personal or small management. See here. Do people you add in the assigned to field need to be added to the planner board? And if so, doesn't that give them the ability to see all tasks regardless of whether they're assigned to them or not? That is correct. So you do need to have people assigned to the planner board as members in order to add them to tasks. When you assign them to any particular card, that's not only giving them access to just that card, they do get to see the whole board. That's kind of the point in a way of Planner. If you're trying to, again, segregate out smaller tasks, more robust tools are necessary for it. When we're looking at the idea of structuring your day and just making sure that people can kind of have a peek into it, I would never put anything sensitive into a planner board, ever. I wouldn't put anything sensitive into any place that has any type of public access to begin with. But at the same time, though, when you look at it from the team's angle, if we're using a planner board to manage documents, if we're using a planner board to look at people's tasks, normally the people that are on that board really shouldn't have any issues with seeing your tasks anyway, or any of the documents associated with that team. And of course, all the protections that come with teams. So let's say that we lock down a team, make it so that it's a private channel, and only members of that channel can actually see that team. Well, that security is enforced. Nobody's going to be able to have access to that. And even on the team side, I don't believe, don't quote me, but as far as I'm aware, we can't add permissions through teams that will give access to a planner board. A planner board will deny permissions if they're not a member on it. So you should still have that level of control as well. That is another great use of Planner. So someone called out another great use of Planner is for reviewing message center messages. You can turn on Message Center Sync to Planner, and then you can visit it weekly and triage tasks. You can look at Microsoft's posts. That is another great use for it in terms of just overall organization and being on top of the Message Center posts. Point card, I just use a number scheme. Number scheming for linking cards is great. I've used that before myself. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll either, for example, I like to link tickets to certain cards. So if I generally create a ticket card for my tickets for a month. What I'll do is I'll either take the ticket number if I'm working with something that actually has a structured ticketing system. And then when I call that out on another card, if it needs to evolve into something where I need to put more time into, I will definitely use that type of linking methodology. Using a number system, a lettering system, a naming convention, something that actually calls it out. You can even use tagging to that end. Taking a tag, if you don't necessarily have a robust tagging mechanism, you can always take a tag and you can just say, hey, I'm going to assign this tag, call this compliance issue 1, and then whatever you assign that tag to can be a card associated with that task or that project. That's definitely a methodology that I've seen used. If you look at some of the template boards Microsoft creates, it actually does use tags in that manner. So you can create new boards based off of templates where it's like things like project management, new hire onboarding, things like that. But I just feel like it gets a little bit convoluted with the number of boards that need to be created for those types of things. Some great links in the chat as far as getting that message center thing going. Let's see here. Do you know anything about Microsoft Planner rosters? Ran across it, but it seems like it could create confusion. Talk about rosters versus M365 group for users to try to track all of it. So we haven't even brought it up. I have not heard of rosters. That is definitely something I'll be looking into as soon as we're done with this. Yeah, can't really talk to that one much. So for Power Automate, as far as reminders goes, obviously with the Power Automate, we can take a lot of things out. We can use graph requests. We can take information from most of Microsoft's apps and channel that into creating reminders. The biggest thing on those types of things, though, for me is that's just one more thing I need to manage day to day. And if something breaks, it's something I've got to fix. So while for the most part, creating a simple Power Automate task is something you could do, I'm just not keen to add that complexity to my workflows. The whole reason I use Planner is because it's simple. It allows me to structure things in a quick manner that I don't have to have a ton of underlying complexity. Right, I think that about sums up most of the questions. I do agree, Ryan. So Ryan mentioned Planner really needs at least a recycle bin or some type of versioning. Not having the ability to back up or restore. Anyone can delete a bucket and there's no means to recover. That is another weakness. If someone did decide that they wanted to go through, delete cards, they wanted to throw things around, right now that's not recoverable. So unfortunately, there is no versioning on that. So again, make sure that whoever you're adding in, it's smaller groups. Don't open it up to your whole company. Don't open it up to large teams. Keep it as simple and constrained as possible. Planner is definitely something, in my opinion, that is best used for personal use if you want to be able to have something that's project tracking for yourself, and maybe a few others that you just want oversight. So as far as the recurring feature goes, I do use it. I typically use that for things like when I keep a monthly ticket queue to track the number of tickets that I work on. I have a security checklist I go through every morning where that card just goes in today's list at the very top. So it's got a checklist of all the things that I need to run through. The other thing that I'll use recurring features on is processes that maybe I've got to kick off a script. Maybe there's something that isn't fully automated but needs to be done regularly. Anything that necessarily needs to come in and be done more than once, I'll set it as recurring just to make sure that I've got that oversight. Whenever migrate Planner to another environment, is it possible? So as far as migrating Planner to another environment, you can actually export Planner out, and then I believe you can import it in through Excel. Let me switch my screen back real quick. So what we can do is we can export the whole plan to Excel. We can copy the plan. These are the types of things that we can do to make it so that we have these abilities to push this into other tenants. If there's like another board or another tenant you want to push this into or design. As far as the ability to migrate the whole thing over seamlessly, it does look like ShareGate does have the ability to do it. As far as what you do with the data or copying links, getting things moved around with planner boards, it's still kind of limited in terms of its scope as far as the ability to have that migration feature, the ability to shift things around or create templates. One other thing I did forget to mention, and this is another thing that I've done as well, is adding the plan to your Outlook calendar. This will make it so that if you have that scheduling feature, you can add that into your Outlook calendar as well. So when I said that, looking at the schedule, this tells me what's coming up, what's going on. Having that ability to have things integrated into, I apologize if you guys can hear my dog barking at the mailman. Having the ability to
noise canceling, Daniel.
Yes, Teams for the win. So having the ability to look at these things with your Outlook calendar, being able to see what meetings you have coming up, being able to have all that data synchronized, definitely another great feature about this for personal tracking. So that about summarizes it for me. If nobody else has any questions, I think that's pretty much it for my time.